Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming to our talk on modernising procurement and the supply chain. My name is Alistair Blake and I'm the founder and CEO of ProcurePro. We're the global leader in procurement software for main contractors. We're carving out a new category of construction technology, which we're excited to show you about today. We've taken the market by storm in Australia over the last few years. We've come into the UK and Ireland most recently. And today we've got Colin Campbell with us from Legacie Developments. Colin, I'll let you introduce yourself, mates.
Yes, morning everyone. Colin, Operations Director at Legacy. We're a developer, contractor and lens and management company. So we're based out of Liverpool and I've been there now just 2.5 years. Prior to that, I was 23 years with Procurement Consulting. I'm a civil engineer, but I have a love for all these sorts of techie things. We'll see where it takes us a conversation.
I suppose before we do get into the details of procurement for main contractors is incredibly important. It's where 80 to 90% of your costs go through your supply chain. Colin, what started you down this path towards modernising procurement?
This is probably a bit of a curveball, really, because it would be disingenuous of me to say we had some master plan. The reality is I stumbled across Alistair and ProcurePro, and I stumbled across it through the marketplace of Procore. And we're at the very start. I'm in the process, and I probably have been for the last 2 years since I joined, trying to define what our digital strategy will look like. And we've been grappling a little bit. And actually, it's really difficult. I found it really difficult to try and map out this sort of umbrella and all this overlap of systems. And I literally stumbled across a video online, and I watched it for 2 minutes. We'll talk about that, I think, later and what the system provides. But very quickly, within a few minutes, I was very quickly convinced and intrigued that this could answer and a ring-fenced part of our project delivery. Procurement is incredibly involved. There's so much goes on in procurement, but it's one of the few things I think in construction that you can actually ring-fence. And there's a solution here that we can solve a problem. But we, as a business, we had very few systems and processes. So we have no visibility, very little visibility on sites. And it's not the big brother approach of trying to monitor everything that's happening on site. It's giving tools to the staff that are actually delivering the project to make things more efficient for them. So anything that we could find that was low-hanging fruit, we want to grab it and take it and implement it as quickly as we can.
Absolutely. And I might just illustrate to everyone, procurement sort of means all manner of sins, depending on your context. And some people, certainly in construction, consider procurement as estimating or tendering. So it does help just to lay out how we see the procurement process. For main contractors, commercial teams, think commercial managers, quantity surveyors, you're planning, tracking, reporting on a procurement schedule at the start of the job when you set it up. And as procurement progresses, you're drafting up scope of works, copying from job to job. You're going out to tender. You're getting those quotes in, analysing them, comparing them. You're then putting that through an internal sign-off process with different limits of authority, putting it into a contract, signing, storing it, committing it into your financial system. And finally, tracking all those vendors and managing risk. And this is unfortunately the desktop of many quantity surveyors out there in the industry. I suppose looking at that picture as well, Colin, what were the conversations like internally after you did stumble across the desire to modernise this area of your business?
There weren't that many conversations, if I'm honest, and that comes down to something separate, which is the speed of implementation and how we've chosen to adopt, in this case, ProcurePro. We are not a business who makes decisions by committee and wants to spend 12 months, 18 months analysing, assessing, engaging, because by the time we've done that, nothing's moved on in the world. And so I remember watching this video for 2 minutes the day before I'd had a conversation with someone about procurement schedules and the fragmented nature of our documentation associated with the various steps of procurement from cradle to grave, and how impossible it is to expect us to have to manage all this. It's just, and we've got a lot of younger staff and they really struggle to see the full picture of what procurement looks like and the importance of robust scopes of work. And then we're getting to subcontracts that are executed with company names and all this nonsense that's going on. And you think, how do you solve this? And literally, when I watched this video, I dragged in our commercial manager, said, watch this, 90 seconds. And I think the next day I reached out to ProcurePro, and I think 9 days later, we'd agreed to move forward with the product. But there weren't many conversations to actually answer the question. I spoke to a few key people. What do you think of this, guys? And it resonated very quickly with them that there was a problem here. We hadn't identified the problem. We'd identified principles about how we want to digitize documents rather than have all these bits of paper flying around. but we hadn't identified all the problems that we were trying to solve.
And look, speaking of problems to solve, when we talk to the industry, to constructors about challenges within procurement and those that they do want to solve, it really boils down to those 12 key things here around visibility, manual process, disconnected workflows, delays, reporting, inconsistency, scalability. Some that people are aware of, some they're maybe not aware of. Sometimes the answer is trick question, all of the above. What are you trying to solve? But Colin, when we showed you this picture, was there any things that you became more acutely aware of that were things that you wanted to tackle in the business?
So I think, yeah, when I saw this, it was more about particular things resonating. I have a particular issue with scope of works gaps because as a contractor, that's where we lose money. That is our biggest issue probably in the industry. It's not defining the scope of works properly and fairly so that people know what they're meant to be doing. If we can bring clarity to that, the job's going to be more successful. So that was a key thing for us. But more fundamentally on the process, it was about disconnected workflow and the inconsistency. How can we expect our staff to work in a consistent fashion? And this isn't actually about legacy. We don't procure any differently to every other contractor in the business. So why on earth do we create all this process that's slightly different but brings no value? And so really it was the fact that procurement is so fragmented and bringing it into a system brings, yes, it brings visibility, but this wasn't again about the directors getting visibility. It's about giving the teams themselves as isolated teams the visibility to do the procurement. And they themselves can see what other sites are doing in terms of what commitments those vendors have on other sites. So they can start to work a bit more autonomously. And they can get KPIs from the rest of the business. It's just centralized a lot of information.
And in terms of that journey around digitization, what ProcurePro does is a solution. It provides visibility across all projects, people, supply chain. It takes care of that entire workflow that we've spoken about, and then it plays nicely with a lot of the construction tech ecosystem that's out there. Now, in terms of part of our journey as a founder in this space and modernizing this part of the ecosystem is, it can seem quite simple when you put it on a slide, but this is really the intersection of a few different parts of technology. It's project management, it's tendering, supply chain is pretty well established, particularly in the UK around managing compliance. But when people think about procurement, it often gets thought about as tendering or estimating. When people think about supply chain, it's often not connected into the decision-making process. So you might have compliance, you might have ratings, you might have some insights onto particular subcontractors' workload or capacity or the commercial opportunity to do a bulk purchase, but is it actually in people's fingertips, and are they making smarter and faster decisions that ultimately drive better commercial outcomes? And really that's the journey that we've been on with a lot of contractors in the industry in really defining this area of construction tech. From here, we've talked about the why and to why this was important. You spoke earlier around going why this makes sense, and construction tech, many people in the audience go, there's a lot out there, there's a lot in this room today. How do we know which way's up? How do we know what's the best? Can you talk about what resonated in our discussions around why this was an area that was actually quite easy to make a decision on?
There's a number of things, really. I think I mentioned this word ring fencing earlier. The fact that so much software out there overlaps, and I find it quite confusing as to which bit do we use this tool for and this one. And you can then feel you're not getting good value because you're paying for something that you only use 3/4 of and the like. And so that there's no doubt that was a big appeal. The fact that this ring fencing of procurement, and the integration was really key. We didn't even really appreciate yet. It integrates with Procore, which is our project management tool. But the integration with Companies House was massive for us. You didn't even realize how many times you go trying to execute documents and it's their own company name and the like. So companies are dissolved or liquidating, can't get through the system. We know we're using the right business. The fact that it integrates with DocuSign, really simple stuff. But therefore the documents can stay in the system and be executed and gross executed. It just makes sense, these sort of things. It's the fact that we could take a system that didn't overlap with anything else we had. It hits the sweet spot in a number of our objectives. And some of our objectives around this are to make decisions based on data, not opinions. And procurement is littered with opinions and feelings of who you like and who you think's done a good job in the past. It's not necessarily based on fact. And that's really key. And the system allows us to do that and gives our staff the tools to do that. They can see how companies have performed in the past. They can see how companies have been, what their bidding history has been. It gives us visibility to be able to give good feedback to the supply chain on why they're not successful on projects, why they've bid for 10 jobs and never been successful. There's so much in it, which is brilliant. I couldn't get away from the fact that the cost of the product for what we get for it is incredibly good value.
And let's shift gears a little bit towards transforming this area of your business, and implementation of any new system or change management is scary for a lot of people, can be considered tough. We're actually talking about tough just before we got on stage, and Colin might not be the most trustworthy person to talk to on this, because he's actually told me he did a 370-kilometer run across Scotland. And I said a bike ride, and he said, no, a run. And we said, oh, how was that? And he goes, oh, it was easy enough. It was only, 5 kilometers an hour or something. But can you talk to us, Colin, about what the uptake's been, and the attitudes of the people internally towards changing this area of the business?
Probably fairly typical. You get your naysayers, you get the people who just don't see it as a problem, and then you get your real advocates. But I've alluded to this earlier, we're not a business who's going to take months and months or years to try and make decisions. It became very obvious and apparent to us quite quickly that if we'd made a mistake here and adopted the wrong software, so what will change? Literally, I think within 9 days from the first conversation, we'd agreed a contract. We didn't actually sign it for a month because I was on holiday and various things. I think we really spoke in that period. But then from the end of August, within 2 or 3 weeks, we had all our projects in ProcurePro. So the implementation was really simple. We've got zero business development team in our business. We have no IT people. So it would be fair to say I've done that maybe an hour a day over a week or something like that. So it was really simple to implement. And the take up, we've done a few training days with our commercial team at first. So we've had a team of various levels, from trainees through to commercial managers and managing surveyors. And there's maybe about 20 of those individuals. And it became very apparent in a couple of those sessions who your champions were. We've got the people who are just straight all over it, and we just now use those individuals. We've got support from ProcurePro to implement and answer queries and but we want to take that in-house and have that skill set in-house. I've got probably 3 or 4 key people who are like all over it. They set up their system really quickly. They're trying to push the boundaries of how it should be used. Yeah, so that's 60 days, 2 months. Yeah. We're not leveraging the full benefit yet, but we're well on our way to that.
And one of the things that we find interesting, and again, have a lot of conversations with the industry around procurement as a topic and a category of software. It's actually an area of the business that we find is quite nice to be able to get good uptake of technology. If you look at surveyors as a category of person and professional, they're generally white-collar workers, tertiary educated, they're back office staff. So we're not necessarily having the fight of, hey, we've got to change manage all of our site-based staff members or our subcontractors. It's a relatively contained area of the business. And as a result, or there's probably another key aspect to it, which is technology change can be hard when it really drags on. And if you're implementing a new document control system, that might take you 2 years, and you might only bring that onto new projects. So there's plenty of technology out there and in the room as well, where you can make a decision whether you do a few trial projects, but you can actually change your whole business and bring projects on that are in flight. And I think, Colin, you and Legacy set some records. I think it was 16 projects onboarded within the space of a couple of weeks. It really does give you that velocity of change, and then also consistency of process at the other end.
We put in, like any business, so that we've got 16 live projects. Some were just literally finishing, no procurement to be done, but we said, actually, let's backfit in. Let's spend half a day backfitting in the data, who the vendors were, what their prices were. Let's score them in there. And then we projects that maybe 50%, 70% through procurement, let's bang them in. We might not utilize the full benefits of the system on those projects, but let's get that in there. We're not going to go back to old projects from 3, 4, 5 years ago and then new projects rolling it out. So all our projects are now in ProcurePro. Yeah, and that's probably been the biggest surprise to me, how quick it's been to get all of our projects in the system, because I think it's one of the biggest challenges for construction businesses, how you implement new software on a rolling suite of projects at different stages. That's probably one of our biggest challenges as an industry. How do you do that? And if something's quick and easy and relatively simple and it's got real benefits quite quickly, then why wouldn't you?
Legacy is relatively early in the journey. They're at that point where you've brought the system in. We've got that initial use and uptake, but fair to say, Colin, you're not necessarily receiving all of the benefits yet, but that's in the future to come. We've certainly seen other businesses, and again, from our experience working with customers, the real value becomes the first order benefits of, can you make things better? Can you make things easier for your teams to work with? But then comes into what information is sitting there in the system that you can make smarter decisions on. So having all of that information and that consistency across your team, your supply chain, we're finding with businesses actually it starts to change the conversations, being able to see, hey, this subcontractor is tendering across 3 or 4 jobs at once. Have we just had a Barney with them and we don't want to award them any more work, or do we have a bulk purchase opportunity? I think what's significant is that sort of information can historically be trapped in the heads of senior staff members like Colin or the directors who've got too many things in their day to sit up the top directing traffic, going, you talk to you, here's a risk, here's an opportunity. So what the modernisation of the supply chain side of things does is it democratises that information to the project teams, to the commercial managers, to the surveyors to go, hey, I can actually spot opportunity, manage risk and make a smarter decision myself without necessarily needing the steer and the pass from the powers that be.
Yeah, there's a couple of really good examples of that I say we're nowhere near getting the full benefit of the system yet, but if we take scopes of work and the digital scopes of work that are embedded in the system, if someone's got a good idea, just they can tweak the scope of work, but then it's there for every other site to get the benefit. It's not going through some centralised process to sit in a steering committee for a few months to decide whether we should change that document or not. It's there for everyone's benefit. The KPI scoring, just the 5-star scoring. There's a lot of good stuff behind the scene, but it's really simple. If I'm going on holiday and I'm looking at a few different hotels, I go on TripAdvisor, how many? It's out of 5. Is it more than 4.5? Now, I can go and look at all the detail behind it, but giving that data to the site teams, I think, is invaluable. And that's far more important than the visibility that the directors get of the system.
And look, to wrap up, we'll leave a bit of time for questions here, but that it's probably the last part is to look forward into the future. And I spring this one on you, mate, so I'll give you a little bit of time to gather your thoughts. But if there's anything around where you see the future of procurement heading and supply chain around what you're looking for, part of what we're seeing, and AI is a hot topic in the world, certainly in this conference as well. We're starting to see a lot of use cases come forth, again, relatively low-hanging fruit, which was mentioned in the keynote, to say there's a lot of information, whether it's in procurement or whether it's in any of your other systems that's sitting there. And if you can describe what is AI in construction, really, it can be characterized as an early warning system, or there's a lot of data that's sitting there. Can we analyze it? Can we bring it to someone's attention? A couple of the use cases which we're working on at ProcurePro at the moment is to say, hey, if you're getting prices in from your supply chain, it shouldn't take 2 weeks to do a comparison. The system can now do a fast, high-level comparison. It might be 80 or 90% right to go, hey, here's how your 5 prices are lining up. 2 of them are dreaming. Don't worry about that. This subcontractor's looking the best, but they're a bit high on a couple of items. Or there's a risk here. There's a high amount of excluded items. Or there's a risk there. We've got low coverage or low workload. It's all a series of checks and balances, which construction professionals are doing at the moment, but really it's business rules that can be embedded within, saying, how do we manage risk? How do we manage opportunity? And can we look at the data, create some rules and really throw some flags to say, hey, we can work smarter and faster as a result of having these early warning signs, not necessarily to automate people's jobs away. So that's a bit of what's coming from a ProcurePro side of things. Colin, I don't know if you've got anything from a legacy side of things that you're looking forward to seeing in this part of the construction value chain.
Where I could see benefit would be the amount of discrepancy and conflict within suites of subcontract documents, being able to flag a lot of that stuff. You get hundreds of pages of documents and there's so much conflict often in that documentation, and there's no reason why AI couldn't be flagging a lot of that stuff up and bringing it to the surface to try and improve and bring more consistency. So, because I think one of the key things is, and we've not explored this yet, it's really important to us as a business how we interact with our supply chain. At the end of the day, we're relying on 40, 50 subcontractors to deliver our schemes. And we really need to engage with them more about their experience of using the likes of this software, because it has to work for those businesses and be efficient and quick. I was really cynical about one of the statistics I was given by ProcurePro. So subcontractors can submit their tenders in the system so they can fill in the price documents and stuff. I was like, they won't do it. They won't do it. And I remember, I don't know if it's yourself, Alice or Gary, somebody said, I think 60 or 70% are doing it. I thought, really? Now, time will tell, but why wouldn't they do that? Oh, because they've got a password. They've been asked to use 10 different systems. But our experience so far is from an end user's experience, in this case, the subcontractor, the vendor, actually it really works for them. There's clearly been thought gone into it. But in terms of the future, I think it is about how do we engage better with that supply chain, because I don't think contractors do that very well. That's where improvements need to come.
And that's really the key message that we hear from plenty of commercial directors to executives in business. It's how do we get our people getting out of the busy work, stop pushing paper around and actually focus on sorting with your supply chain, focusing on the project or the mandate for a quantity surveyor, making money.
If we can get 80% of what is the same on every blooming job, let's get 80% standardized so that people aren't thinking about where to save a document. And if we can get that, then people can start using this to apply to the abnormals or the things that bring real value. And that's what we will be getting or do get already. People already finding efficiencies and they're not scouring around looking for documents, which is great.
We'll wrap that up there. Thank you very much, Colin. Appreciate your time and thank you for everyone's attention.